Hello and welcome back to the O3C podcast, coming to you from O3C Games. My name is Jonathan Dunn, and I am joined by my special guest Zelda fanatic host, Kaspar Meyerowitz.
Tingle Tingle Kulu Limpa. These are the magic words that Tingle created himself. Don't steal them.
Words to live by.
Absolutely.
So, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our first episode in our spoiler special sub-series for Tears of the Kingdom, where we talked... we just talked about the story. A bit of the story. That's
bit
it.
Of the story. Yeah.
We talked about the broad strokes. We picked our way through the memories that you get in the game and gave our thoughts on, quite possibly the greatest story ever told. It was a real treat to dive into that. So we hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for joining us for this next bit of the spoiler special sub series, where we're gonna touch base with Hyrule, that old chestnut, the land of Hyrule, which is, hang on,
What's up?
No, I'm just reading my script. Quite possibly the main story, great story ever told. But the main story isn't the only thing that's notable to talk about in Tears of the Kingdom, because this Hyrule, which is fucking plains. I'm gonna have to close my window.
Thought it was my plane, yeah.
There we go. But the main story isn't the only thing that's notable to talk about, because this Hyrule, which is several years on from the totally ruined Breath of the Wild Hyrule, is a land that has rebuilt and continues to rebuild, and it's absolutely fascinating to see how certain regions and towns and characters have evolved in their time away from them since Breath of the Wild. It's certainly a more alive place to exist in these days, and Nintendo have made sure to pepper the game with some just incredibly well-written and engaging NPCs and supporting characters, and the side quests you end up going on, they're just so much more developed and involving than, the sort of usual fetch quests or, little mini puzzle-solving things. The way the dialogue's written conveys so much depth. For those people sort of knocking the idea that, it's just set in the same map as Breath of the Wild, therefore it's the same world, that, it couldn't be further from the truth, and because the world was so well developed, because the lore was so well defined, it really is a treat to come back to the same map, so you can see all 100%. Of the different ways in which everything's evolved, and it's, there's just so much, What did you make of it all?
Well, I want to say something about that specifically. That critique to me is not just unfair. I think it's ridiculous, because truly.
Yeah.
Think about how many games, especially this scope. How many times as a kid have you played a video game, right? And then the next game comes out, and what you really wanted was to hang out in that world again with the same people. And you wanted a continuation. You're like, I want to hang out with these people. I want to know what happens afterwards, And it's weird, because I feel like that's a very common desire for most people, but it's very rarely done by developers in video games. I think part of why it's rarely done is that it's very difficult to do right, as we've seen with movies and books, like sequels are, minefield. It's just, difficult to do. But I think it's preposterous. I've, spent since 2017. I've played Breath of the Wild on and off every year, a little bit at least, for, dozens, if not more hours. And every time, my thought is, I really want to hang out in this world after it's resolved.
Yeah.
I want to know what they've done. I want to know how they're, how Hateno Village is going on. I want to know what, Kakariko is doing. I want to know what these people have done since.
Yeah.
So to me, setting it, 6-7 years after the fact is perfect, because it's exactly what I want to know. I want to know, are they rebuilding? What's the mood? You know, and the mood is fantastic because it's gone from, doom and gloom. It's been, so what people forget is when Link wakes up in Breath of the Wild, it's been 100 years of calamity for these people. So, older people, some are over 100, like, Impa, I don't know how, but whatever. And Robbie and Pura and all that stuff. But, most people, the adults, the kids, that's all they've known.
Yeah.
They've been born in a world that is shattered, that is holding on by a thread, being Zelda holding, Ganon at bay from destroying the world completely. And so they've grown up in a world that's been shattered. It's like, not to, minimize the real world thing, but it is kind of like, hey, you've been born and raised in a war zone.
Yeah.
And what that is. And it's like hard to have hope. It's hard to, they have no fighting spirit. You see that in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like, Link is the only one who does. A couple of other people, but the fighting spirit's gone. Most of these people are, they have fear. They're not building. They're surviving. You know what I mean? And that's what's brilliant. Like, you're like, at the end of the game, I'm like, I want to see these people build. I want to see these people filled with hope. And that's exactly what Tears of the Kingdom does.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. And they're faced with another calamity, but this time they have hope.
Yeah.
So it's completely different.
Yeah.
It goes from a hopeless world that is still, Breath of the Wild is still filled with positivity and people who are living their lives, but they're not fighters. They don't have that spirit. They're not builders. They're not fighters. Tears of the Kingdom is filled with people who have hope. And the group of people you meet who are fighting, those little side missions where you're fighting as a group and you're helping these guys who have like buckets for armor.
Yeah.
And they don't care, and they're willing to do it because this time it's different. They know they can do it. They know that it's surmountable. They know there's a different possibility out there.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And like the fact that you see all of these different towns in a more evolved state. You see things like in Hateno Village where they've got like a mayoral election going on. Zelda's helped build a school, and it's a sign that sort of there's a society that's getting back to some sort of sense of normality. You look at what's happening over in Tarrytown. And Tarrytown is obviously a town on the grow, and that's continued to grow. Hudson's becoming some what is he? He's running for president of something.
He's expanded.
He's expanding.
He might be a bit of a problem if we keep going down this timeline. He's a little bit.
Yeah, but he's
there will be blood. Daniel Plainview, character.
Yeah.
The ambition, greed is maybe a bit much, and the exploitation of workers. I mean, we're going to get into that later with Addison, but I mean, it's just like
yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
To quickly jump back to the school part, what's even more amazing about that school is it's packed with kids who are, maybe oldest one is like, I don't know, 8.
Yeah.
They don't know what calamity is.
Yeah.
And they're like, whatever. No, like, it's not a thing. We don't care. They don't have that. And that's part of the optimism thing. It's like these kids have not grown up in a world that was destroyed. I mean, now suddenly there's a threat, but not in Hateno. But they don't know that. They grew up in a world that was rebuilding. It was a world free of threat. Yeah. So these kids are like, they're full of pep. It's really nice to see. It's really heartwarming, honestly.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the things that really sort of helps with all of that stuff is how much more sophisticated the dialogue is in the game between the characters, and not just how well it's written, but in how well it actually works in terms of how the dialogue is receptive to what you've been doing and what's going on, and it changes accordingly. And that's and that's stuff that has been obviously painstakingly programmed and written. It's not this isn't some sort of AI generated thing. It's because there's such wonderful little touches and little turns of phrase and stuff and little reactions that you get from certain characters because you've done things in a certain order. And it's all of those just little things that make this world feel real, that make it feel lived in, like I said, that make it feel reactive. It makes you feel like you've got a place in it. And that sort of stuff you can't just copy and paste into a Word document and chuck it out as a sequel. That's stuff that takes years to consider and to write and to program to get it feeling like that.
And again, this is exactly what the conversation is. People who are like $70 DLC, lazy devs. It's exactly that. It's trying to explain to them that the reason why you can get a game like Tears of the Kingdom is because they're reusing assets.
Yeah.
It's because they're using the same map, even though it's changed drastically, but they are using, a lot of the same, basic assets.
Yeah.
But because of that, they are capable of spending their time on details. And details is what makes this game go from a great game to a stone cold masterpiece. It is that everything is thought out to an unbelievable degree. It's just a staggering amount of work, And I would love to see a video on like all the optional dialogue that you can get, depending on what you've done and all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure it's like, insane. And that stuff is so hard to do. I think of a game like, how many games can you think of that do this successfully? Like maybe Hades, but Hades does that because of the structure and because of how they can implement it. But it's so difficult to do this right,
Like once you sort of, once we sort of realised what, how sort of more reactive the dialogue was in Tears of the Kingdom, and like me and you were talking about it as we were sort of experiencing it and just how nice it was. Since then, obviously, I've replayed through Breath of the Wild, and it's not the same. It's absolutely fine in there,
right?
But there's a fluidity that you don't get. Where, like, say if you go and talk to somebody who's going to give you a side quest, but you've already actually done it, in Breath of the Wild, you'll talk to the person and they'll say, "Oh, I'm missing my horse," and then you talk to them again. Oh, you found it.
Right.
Whereas in Tears of the Kingdom, there'll be something that's thought out for that moment, which is that's framing it slightly differently. So that you're not just sort of going through some text boxes, Yeah,
that's what happened to me with the Golden Horse quest, where I literally rode in on the Golden Horse.
Yeah.
And talked to Pen, who gives you the mission to find the Golden Horse. Pen being the bird from the newspaper quest. And he literally was about to say, I think in my dialogue, it was literally like, so yeah, I've heard there's a good... What? Oh, you've already found it. Like literally, like stops himself from giving you that quest, and be like, oh, never mind. Literally in the dialogue, which is fantastic. I think that was the first, I had seen it probably a few times before, but that was the first glimpse into, they've really done this. Wow. And then I actively thought it, I was actively trying to find stuff like that. You know what I mean? I was literally like, oh, I've already done this. Let's see what they,
I mean, I would, like you said, I would love to see sort of all of, because there's going to be so many instances of it that I just wasn't aware of because it flowed and it felt right. But whereas you might have picked up on it not being quite right if it wasn't there, But like with so many side quests in RPGs, all I'm trying to do is just get through them so I can get the reward. You know, that's what I'm trying to do. And I was like that in Breath of the Wild, because you know the side quests in that are largely sort of small fetch quest things that are fun, but I didn't care about the dialogue. I cared about the reward, you know, because I'm a bloody mercenary. But it's very different. It's very different in this game. And let's move on and talk about like some of this stuff, because the NPCs in this world are, well, for a start, they are actually developed from characters that were in Breath of the Wild, and it's not just a case of reusing assets. Yes, that's part of it, but they're taking so many small stories and giving these characters life after that. And there's just so much more story for so many more people in this world. And so many of these stories also tie into the larger story at play. And something that they've done differently to Breath of the Wild is they've divided the side quests into two types. So you've got the traditional side quests, which are the more sort of run-of-the-mill side quests you would expect. You know, help me out, my wife's gone missing, that type of thing. Go and beat this monster, build a thing, cook me an egg, and
the Xenoblade type,
and to be fair, like most of those have some nice writing and placement,
they do.
And we'll dive into some of those properly in a minute. But there's also the new side adventures, which are the more substantial side quests, which have got more of an overarching story that usually ties into what else is happening with the world and the story of the game, and I mean, they're extraordinary. They're brilliant. They're some of the stories of those side quests or those side adventures are enough to carry an entire game. You know, it's crazy
for sure. At least an NES game.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than that.
Let's start with discussing some of our favourite and most memorable side quests. So the smaller ones, the smaller ones.
Okay, so let me scroll down to my there we go. I just want to say before I forget, I probably won't, but the other thing that's amazing about these side quests is that once you're done and it says quest completed, you can move on with your life. But a lot of times, if you go back to talk to anybody who was remotely involved in the quest, there will be additional dialogue that is never required by the game. There's never any like, hey, did you perchance talk to this guy afterwards? No, it's just there. 100% up to player agency to find it. There's no question mark. There's no side quest for it. There's no reward. The reward is you talk to these guys and there's a whole bunch of dialogue, a whole bunch of stuff.
It's just let's say, beautifully organic.
It is. Like that one quest where the kids want to find out who these mysterious monsters are that are described with horns and all that stuff. And at first it's a terrifying monster. It turns out it's these little creatures that Zelda was raising somewhere.
Yeah.
And you tell these kids about it, and they they were like, oh, so we were right, and this was right, and then can you describe it? And they start drawing it in the sand. And and they're really happy about it, and they're like, "Oh, we can tell. Remember, this guy didn't believe us." It's fantastic, and it's 100% optional. Most people will not find that out because they will never talk to those kids again.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like most parents do. But it's it's staggering, and I love that kind of thing. And again, how many games can you name that have that kind of thing, like a post-quest optional dialogue? And I'm going to bring up a game that you don't like, but it's that I'm in. Red Dead Redemption 2 has a fantastic example of that. I will not spoil it because it is literally, if you ever played a game, it's one of the most moving things I've ever done in a game.
Yeah.
But there is a quest line where you teach this woman to hunt and fish who's lost her husband. And that's not even the part it is a great quest in itself. It's one of my favorite quests in the game. It's an optional quest. That is like, there's a little mark like, oh, you can go there. But there is something that, much later in the game, no spoilers, if you go back and there's no indicator of this, there's a whole cutscene, a whole thing, and it is tremendously moving. And it reminded me of that when I was playing Breath of the Wild. It's like that attention to detail.
Yeah.
Of like, nobody's expecting that. Nobody would be upset if there wasn't anything to find there. But the fact that there is something that rich, that thought out, that is completely optional, has no rewards besides the actual, interaction, is phenomenal. And is what makes the difference between a good and a phenomenal game,
I mean, I guess, that is obviously what comes with the luxury of being a big studio. The fact that you can just take as much time as you want, essentially, to get every single aspect right.
Right.
But then also, a lot of studios have that time and money and don't. So it's great when they do.
Bethesda. Sorry.
So let's have a chat about some of our favourite side quests.
Let's do it.
I've got. You start.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. I think what I did was I went in my Switch, looked at the side quests, and was like, "Do you remember this one? Is it memorable? Was this anything good about it?" I was like, "Yeah." Okay, so the pictures for the stables.
Oh yeah, that's what I've got.
First of all, huh? Yeah,
that's the only thing I've got written down.
But okay, so what I want to talk about before we even delve into the actual quest is the fact that I had no idea that it was a quest for about 160 hours.
Yeah. And I remember because you were messaging me being like, "There's like 12 quests I haven't got, and I don't know where they are. What on earth are they?"
Exactly. Yeah, it was like one of the probably last 20 quests because there's 130
is it?
quest or something, 139 or something insane.
Something like that.
But yeah, I was missing like 20 of them, and I was like, I can't have been missing 20 of them. I mean, I've been everywhere. I've talked to everybody. And, of course, it's the pictures of the stables, because every single stable in the game has these quests. And one of them even has 2 of them.
So these are the photography quests that are set by the stable owner. There's a blank frame in every single stable.
And that's how you activate it, and that's why I didn't find out, because I never went up to the frame and pressed and said, "Hey, what's this?"
Man, you got to be intrigued by an empty frame. And then they'll give you a specific thing that they want a photo of. And the thing that I love about that is that you don't need to take a good photo. You just need to go and vaguely photograph a thing. But I tell you what, those are some very good photos I took.
I am certain that the professional photographer director that you are, I did try some of them. I'm pretty proud of myself. My favorite one I've done is the stable requires you to take a picture of the statue in Terrytown.
Oh, yes.
There's, I think I'd already gotten the Korok, so there's this nice little Korok dude hanging out. But on top of that, there's this little girl who runs around the town square. And I waited just for the moment for her to come into frame to take it, and like she's smiling and kind of looking in my direction, and I'm like extremely happy with it. And that's the kind of thing, it's completely optional. You could take the worst picture in the world.
Yeah,
and
exactly. You can get the tip,
and the guy would be like,
that's it. I mean, I was waiting for the right time of day, for the right light, for the right weather.
Terrence Malick, Days of Heaven.
Absolutely. The only one I sort of didn't do that on was the one with the Octorok lake, where there's a specific lake that
it's
if
really
you
hard
see
to take
it from
a good
above, after it's rained, it looks like an Octorok, and it was almost impossible for me to get the right sort of height I wanted. I
built a Zonai device.
Yeah, so I was floating up on like a little hovercraft thing.
Same.
Because you need to be standing, not mounting something to use your camera.
It has to be, exactly.
And then it was that just pissed me off too much to get a perfect one, but it's still a good photo.
Mine's okay, but it's not great. Yeah, what I also love is and again, this is not something that's typical at all. Let's say this for people who've played 2 games in their lives. They allow you to retake the pictures once you're done with the quests. You can go up to the guy. Yeah, the guy says at the end of the thing, he's like, "Hey, if you ever want to replace it with a different picture, just come and talk to me. So if you have this
Lovely
nagging
stuff.
thing, you're like, I hate this picture so much. Nope, none of that. You can
Right. Where's
take
my
your
Tears of
time.
the Kingdom? Let's get this fucking Octorok done.
But yeah, I mean, that level
Just put my
of
fisheye
care.
lens on it. I think that's going to work.
You
Is
get the
it?
Game Boy camera for it, yeah.
Oh,
Do you know there's did you see this at a total tangent here? First of all, there's a whole scene of Game Boy camera photographers.
yes.
Professional photographers.
Brilliant.
Who just love the grain. There's a Neil Young album cover that is a Game Boy camera picture from that his son took.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's Rust and Gold, I believe. You can look that up.
I am.
It is. But there's a whole scene, yeah, of taking the Game
Silver
Boy camera
and
for people
gold.
who don't know. Yeah, silver and gold. Yeah, for people who don't know what the Game Boy camera is, it was a cartridge with a little, probably the shittiest lens that ever existed. Put on a Game Boy, the original Game Boy, not Game Boy Color, not Advance, the original Game Boy. You could put a camera in it. It was some sort of like. Not a game per se, but
There
things
was
you
a
could
few
do.
like Game and Watch style
Yeah,
games
right,
in there
right.
that you could sort of put your face
You could,
in and stuff. It
you
was
could
great.
do. But it had a battery,
yeah.
and it saved your pictures. And at the time, you couldn't upload them on anything. But
No,
now,
but you could get the Game Boy printer
True,
and print
you
them
could
out
get-
on stickers with a little sort of inkless, like
which
burning printer.
I need to get a Game Boy printer. I have a Game Boy camera. I don't have a Game Boy
yeah,
printer. I have to get
likewise. I never. Chris had a Game Boy printer. I just had the Game Boy camera.
I have to get it.
He had the camera as well. It wasn't
Yeah,
like
yeah,
some mad ridiculous partnership that we did. But we I love
But
I
now,
love that thing.
with the analog pocket that I have, that I can hook up to HDMI,
nice.
I could literally make an entire movie on the Game Boy camera if I
I
wanted
challenge
to.
you.
I might,
Next pandemic.
which I feel like I just went through it, but it's a different story. Yeah, so anyway, the quick tangent was there's a guy who is a Game Boy camera guy, and he wanted a smaller Game Boy camera cartridge for a reason. So he built it's essentially the exact size of a Game Boy game now. It's not outside anymore. It has a little lens. It's much more
brilliant.
beautifully designed. If he ever sells one, I'm definitely getting one. But yeah, there's a whole scene if you guys are interested. Game Boy camera, amazing. End of tangent.
I can't remember how we got onto that.
Pictures of stables, of course.
Pictures of Stables. Yeah, it's just great. I mean, it's an element of the game that I forgot I loved when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I remember when I first got the Hyrule Compendium in Tears of the Kingdom, and I sort of remembered that there's like 500 things you need to photograph. I was like, oh god, not again. But then when you just sort of get into it.
Oh yeah,
you just get into it, and it's just lovely, you know. And I was taking pictures just because I've had a nice moment, you know. And that's
I
just
love
the
it so
game
much.
is so beautiful, and there are so many wonderful moments that you just want to stand and look and take a picture of it.
agree.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy how lovely the game looks when, you know, like we said, it's running on 10-year-old mobile phone technology on a 720p screen, occasionally running at 15 frames per second. You know, but it looks better than so many other games, you know, that are...
It does,
you know,
because it has an art direction.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly.
Except, you know, all these other games just look photorealistic. It's
There's
totally
total
boring.
sort of tonal
No, but-
whiplash. I did boot up Pokemon Scarlet or Violet, whichever one I've got, and my god, it is hideous. It's hideous
really
to look
is.
at.
It really is.
You know. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We're not.
What I wanted to quickly say is there is a history of cameras in Zelda games.
Yes.
It is not the first game to do this.
Link's Awakening DX, indeed, had a
That is,
photographer.
I believe that is the first one. I was going to say, I believe
Yeah.
that is the first one. And I will say, I actually I kind of dislike that aspect in that version of the game.
Yeah, you could print them off on the Game Boy printer. The pictures that he took.
Yes, I think the only reason I disliked it is because I am a purist and I like the original version, and everything that they added felt superfluous to me. But it is a nice little touch. It is cute, and it is a nice thing to do, and especially if you had a Game Boy printer, I'm sure people loved it. I'm sure if it's their first version of the game, they probably adore it, and I wish I did too. Anyway, the real meat and the real game that started it as a full-fledged, like, you actually take the picture, because you don't in Link's Awakening DX. No. It's just automatically like, hey, you find this little space and whatever.
Yeah.
Is Wind Waker.
Yeah. The little statues.
Which had not just a photography thing. It had a photography, you had to take pictures of everything. And then there was this mad dude that was on a deserted island that you had to unlock. And he made figurines based on your pictures.
Yeah.
And you could collect every single thing. And then there was a room with all the figurines.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I was obsessed with that quest. It was everything. And it was absolutely amazing. You know, and of course it's what, you know, Tears of the Kingdom is riffing on here.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
Honestly, it's that part of the Wind Waker why I want Wind Waker HD on the Switch so much, so I can do that again.
Yeah, I don't.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Like, of all the things in that game that are wonderful and amazing, I really want to do that.
I love timing like a difficult enemy to take a full picture of him. You know, like from head to toe, not just the face. It's just such a wonderful game.
It's great. It's great. Any other side quests then that stuck out?
Yes, unfortunately for us. Let's see. Wait a second. I think you can. I think someone's. Do you hear this awful ruckus? Yay?
Is it
No.
gone? I heard it. Is it gone? Doesn't.
Now it is. Okay.
Okay.
So, yes. Another side quest I really liked was the Treasure of the Secret Springs, which is given to you by Tulin, the lovely sniper bird. Sage, my favorite sage. I'm sure it's everybody's favorite sage. Guiding, you have to find hot springs, I believe. Guiding the hot springs to fill up a cave.
That's right, yes.
And it was a ton of fun to fill up this, vertical pit of a cave with tons of bombable little things or breakable, and that would just keep filling it up with hot spring.
That's right, because it asks you to find the point where the 3 hot springs converge.
Correct. So you have to find the hot springs first.
And then you see like where the midpoint is, and then there's a cave there.
Which I always love doing that on maps. Brilliant. Is finding a spot, like, hey, you have to, find 3 spots and then the center of the spot.
Yeah.
It's such an Indiana Jones little thing. It's I don't know, it's just so
it's lovely.
It's delightful. Unfortunately, and this is something we will talk about later, the reward was ruined by amiibo drops. Yeah. Because it was I believe it was one of the beasts.
The Divine
masks.
Beast helms.
Yeah. So
I mean, we can touch upon it briefly now. We will come on to it, but obviously, like a lot of the side quests, because there's the whole Misko's treasure. Side quest series, where you basically are finding all of the sort of amiibo unlock armor
from the first game.
Yeah, and it's great that it's all in the game, but the trouble is, you can also unlock it with the amiibos in Tears of the Kingdom as well. So if you're doing like what we did, which was you do your daily amiibo run, where you line up all of your Zelda amiibos and go through them to get all the bonuses, you're probably going to end up with half of the stuff that you're going to get rewarded for from side quests, which means that when you get the reward from a side quest that you've already got, like, I mean, we've said before, like, a lot of the satisfaction you get from doing anything in this game isn't the reward. No. Sometimes the reward is like 5 arrows and you feel great because you finished a thing. But there was something about that I feel that the balance wasn't quite right with how they set that up, really.
Well, I feel like I was robbed of something. The way I am so grateful that I've managed, and we talked about this briefly in a previous episode, but I'm so grateful that I managed to finish the game without anything major spoiled for me. And I felt like that was a bit of a spoiler. It was like, I wish there had been a thing at the beginning, like a little notice, just say, hey, FYI, if you use amiibos, you might get redundant items. and
Yeah.
it might affect some quests. I understand why they didn't have like a little message,
Yeah.
but it is disappointing in the sense that
I think like an easy way around it would just be to replace the amiibo armor pieces in the game. If you get it from an amiibo, just replace it in the game with like a gold rupee.
that's true. That's true.
Because I mean, you can sell
That's-
the extra piece for 600 rupees.
Yeah, but there is a not every one, but there are some that are tied to the story. So like the object itself, like for instance, the one we just discussed, Tulin's is actually linked to the beast that was in that region originally in Breath of the Wild.
And there's 4 of those linked to the 4 champion amiibos.
And that's why this one's particularly stung, is it was like, oh, this really is like thematically, works so well because it's the beast that was in this area, and it was a little disappointing. I just think it's not a huge deal, but it is like I wish I'd known, and then I wish, we'll do a giant PSA at some point during one of these episodes about like, here are the safe amiibos, because there are safe amiibos.
We have put a list together of safe amiibos.
If you want to start the game and you still want to use amiibos for, arrows or whatever, which is, always nice, there are some safe amiibos. And of course, also once you find all the unlockable stuff, you can start using that amiibo.
Yes.
Especially since there's, I believe, at least 20 glider fabrics that are exclusive to amiibos. So you want those. But unfortunately, a lot of them are the same one that unlock the armor. So you have to wait till you get the armor.
But there we go.
Not a big deal.
There we go. It's a minor. Honestly, it's a minor quibble. Anyway,
it's a minor quibble. But yeah, you and I were both a little bit bummed about it.
I don't know if it was a side quest or a side adventure. I looked it up and I couldn't find it because I couldn't remember the name of anything in it. But it's the one where you see some stuff just floating in the sea, and then you follow a trail of it.
Yes, it
back
is
to a thing.
I think I think it's called a bottled cry for help. I have it here in my notes.
Brilliant.
Yes, that's the one you want to discuss. That one. The bottle cry for help. I believe you find a bottle with a message on right by a beach.
Yeah, see, because I missed the trigger of this. So I didn't find this bottle to start the quest. I just saw some stuff floating in the sea.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, and then I went to sort of, what is that? And I got it, and I saw some other stuff, and then I got it, and I ended up following this trail that went halfway around the coast into a secret little thing that ended up finding a shrine or something.
Exactly.
Oh, it's probably a shrine quest.
No, it's not. The thing is...
Is it not?
No, it's a side quest, but that's the confusion, is you do find the shrine in the cave.
But it doesn't unlock the shrine, does it? Because the shrine's there.
It's not like it's a different... He gives you like some random stuff, I forget, for helping him
wheat
out.
Or something.
But then he'll be like, yeah, there was this part, it was blocked and stuff, and of course then it leads you to the shrine. And actually, again, this speaks to... You found it differently. So it speaks to the way the game is designed. It's like you could find it any old way. You could literally go straight to the cave if you were like standing on a ledge above it. You might see it. Or you might, as you did, you might have been in the middle of the sea and you saw, part of the thing. Or like I did, you found the bottle on the beach and you started following the things, So
I love how dynamic the current of the sea is. Which is not in Breath of the Wild.
But that's true.
There's a sort of, there are some sort of like currents that sort of do pull you along and move you around and stuff like that. And that was just really, I all of a sudden, like I remembered just how amazing Sea of Thieves is for like how dynamic the sea is in that. And
still haven't played that one. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean,
I know, but it feels like such a multiplayer thing.
It is. You can't play it on your own.
No.
You can, but don't. Yeah, and it was just like, again, a little touch that just made this world feel just a bit more real and a bit more alive and tangible,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also think it's because in Breath of the Wild you were encouraged to use the Korok leaves to move around the sea, and in this one you could still do that with attaching them and stuff, but it's not as much of a part of it. I barely use them. I might have used them twice. No, like you can use so many different things that they're like, you know what, we're gonna make this more, enticing.
Yeah.
Or just, seamless, I think is probably a better word for it. But yeah, that's the other thing. Like, you could literally never go on the water in this game. You know, you could fly around. You could completely skip that.
Yeah. Or
and
you could build a submarine or a full scale replica of the Titanic, which I've seen people attempting to do.
This will dip into
a
different side quest or whatever it is. I don't even know if it is a side quest. I think it partially is. The Zonai what do you call it? Schemas.
Oh,
that you find underground in the depth. And that give you all these Zonai things that you could have built on your own if you were, psychotic and you went online and whatever.
We'll talk about auto build in I've got that earmarked for another section, so we'll get to that.
But
anyway.
I just wanted to briefly say, like, some of these water contraptions that allow you to navigate are phenomenal.
It's
like
genius.
The little fishing trowel is so
with
wonderful.
The lightning thing.
It has a lightning thing, and then it has a little cage, so you're like essentially just going around, and all the fish that you get, you could do this for like 20 minutes, and all the fish would stay in the little enclave that is like their, the little thing. It is wonderful.
It's very clever.
And it's something that most people will never do in this game, and it could be its own like little game. Like, just go around fishing with that like electric thing and just grabbing as many fish as possible. It's delightful. Anyway, did we talk about this bottle cry for help enough? I think we explained it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Any other side quests? Any other notable side quests for you?
Yes, unfortunately. Fortunately for the player. Let's see. We have the cave mushrooms that glow, capture tent, and who finds the haven, which is a 3-part quest where you find these 2 sisters, Nat and Megan, and they're looking for the mythical mushroom haven. And you find them at different spots in the map. First time you see them, they're very offish. They don't trust you. They don't want to tell you what they're doing. And they're talking about it around it, like kind of, and one of them is, no, don't tell him, or, we don't know this guy. What are you doing? One of the sisters is a little less stranger danger. But they both are obsessed with this mythical mushroom haven. So that's the first time you see them. You do some sort of quest for them in a cave. You don't find the haven. That's not where it is. Then you see them again. Their tent was captured by monsters in a cave. Again, one of those conversations. I had already cleared that when I found them. So they're like, oh, what do you mean? Oh, and Link does his little pantomime like, yeah, I cleared that shit, Exactly. Me Marceau. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, awesome. Okay, so I guess that's done. And then you find them again in front of a different cave somewhere. And that's the who finds the haven part, where you find the mushroom haven. And it's a stunning little room with minerals that glow and tons of different mushrooms from the game. So it's not just like beautiful, but it's also functional because there's tons of little mushrooms that you need for various things.
It's
a you feel like, and you feel like a fun guy when you tell these sisters that you found it, but unfortunately they're a little pissed off that you found it before they did, which is a classic Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom thing, where the people are like, You what? You found, like, this is my life's work. And you feel kind of bad. This person's been looking for something for 35 years, and you're like, I just took 5 minutes out of my game to find this shit. So I'm on my way to save the world again. And you know what? It took me 5 minutes to find this mushroom haven. You guys really need to up your game.
Pull your thumb out.
Yeah, and maybe you consider what you were actually good at in life and do that, because it's not finding mushroom havens. Anyway, so that was that one. I like that one. Did you like that quest?
Yeah, it's lovely. Really lovely.
Yeah. Then the secret room in the Deku tree was one I really enjoyed.
Oh, yeah.
Because partially of the way I found it. I don't know if you found it the same way. And this was actually, again, this is about the echo. This is something I'm probably going to both bring up a lot. But the way Tears of the Kingdom is a game that constantly has a conversation with Breath of the Wild. There's a constant echo of what was in that game. And here it's just a little bit different. So you're rewarded for remembering aspects of Breath of the Wild. For instance, in this particular case, I remembered that at the top of the Deku tree, there was a mission in Breath of the Wild. But, of course, this being Tears of the Kingdom and having access to Ascend, the outstanding new ability that we'll talk about in depth later, I was like, hey, F that. I don't need to climb this tree, which is a pain in the ass. I'm going to go inside the tree, and I'm going to press Ascend to go to the top. And, of course, the devs are like, yeah, you are. And guess what? In the middle of the tree, there's a secret room.
Yeah.
With a little dude, a little Korok seed who wants to decorate it. And it's a lovely little quest. And it was a complete, this is so lovely. You know, I was not expecting it at all. I was expecting to at the top, where there's another quest, by the way.
Yeah.
Similar to Breath of the Wild. Again, echo again. But yeah, you're rewarded for doing little things like that. It is, and it's completely untelegraphed. It was just a little player discovery. It was delightful.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Yeah, there were several moments using Ascend throughout the game where I was just like, oh, I thought I was just going straight up through, to the surface or whatever. And then you'd be like, hang on a minute. What was this? Brilliant.
Yeah, I love it. Misko's treasure caves, of course, there's a whole quest line. Some of them are really kind of cool. I love the way it's designed that if you are in a Misko cave, there's these little,
it's like tattered flags,
kind of flag things.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, this is a Misko cave. So there's like, on top of the cave, which generally has some sort of puzzle or something to do in any of the caves.
Yeah.
This one has another thing. Like it has the Misko treasure, which is usually well hidden. Some of them are pretty well hidden.
Really
in
well
the
hidden.
Cave. Yeah, really well hidden. But of course, you have to find it. So that's a big help, and it's really well designed. It never feels tacked on. It feels like this guy just like put his little things. But the one I liked, there was one. Well, I liked a lot of them, but the Twin Peaks one, not Twin Peaks, but the peaks that are
Dueling Peaks.
Dueling Peaks. There you go. In West Necluda, they have 2 caves, and they have a little puzzle, and they mirror what the shrines that were in Breath of the Wild do.
Yeah.
It's almost a similar thing where you have to look at the pattern in one cave and then place it the same way in the other cave to unlock. And it's a lovely little thing because it's like, hey, you remember how the shrines were, and it's again, lovely little touch. Love that kind of thing. It feels very not kind of portally, or the game that I haven't played that you guys love, The Witness, where it's I just have to find this little hint and then do that. I love that kind of stuff. It's great.
You need to play The Witness.
I know, and I will.
Look, there it is, right there.
I think part of why I haven't yet is because of what a awful human being the developer has turned out to be. Oh, yeah, which is so unfortunate. I know, and you have to do that all the time. You have to do that all the time. I know. I will ignore it, and I will play it. I have it downloaded. I think I'll try to play it on the Steam Deck, maybe. So yeah. Bottle Cry for Help. We talked about this.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah.
Should we move on to side adventures?
Well, you don't want to talk about more side quests? You're done.
And then I mean, we can just keep going.
We don't have to, but I have a few more.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Killing the 3 Hinoxes in the Fallon region was really fun. Again, echoing something you do in Breath of the Wild.
The three brothers Hinox quest
thing.
In
and this one was
Wild,
quite a lot of fun because all the caves they're in are particularly like scrumptious to go through. I don't know. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The Orbs quest in Gerudo is actually one of the best because that one is just it's involved enough to be a side adventure. And I think the reason why they didn't call it that is because the reward is just like lore essentially. So I guess if they had done it as a side adventure, people who were like would have been maybe more disappointed.
maybe, but
I wasn't. I thought it was
great.
delightful to do because it was, again, the fun was in doing the quest, which is extremely involved. It has you finding all the orbs. One of them has like is a hint. Two of them, but there's a hint given to you by the lovely Patricia, who is a Morse forget what they're called in the game, but like Morse creatures, walrus creatures. And she tells it, and one of those is its coordinates, and if you don't have that, there's no way to find it. It's like in a little like on a roof in a pile of sand. Anyway, it's a delightful quest just to play, and then the reward is you get to find out who the eighth warrior was. Yeah, and there's this lovely little room that just has all of the Gerudo shields and weapons. It's just delightful.
It's nice.
It's just nice, and it's just fun. Hot and cold endurance contest.
Oh, they were fun. They were fun.
Very
so silly. Yeah, really silly.
Really silly.
They just see you standing on either a burning hot or a freezing cold platform, and you just have to outlast another guy doing it. But the other guy doesn't have heat resistant and cold resistant potions flowing through his veins, so it's just really funny just to stand there for. I mean, it's about 10 minutes.
No, it's a little less than that. It feels long because you're not doing anything. It's
but you're just standing there, just watching him. And but it was funny. It was really funny.
Very funny. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of some like Japanese manga thing, like the early Dragon Ball, which are very comedic forward, where you have this blowhard. Like they seem to find a lot of funny stuff in Japan is like someone who's a complete blowhard. And a pompous ass who's like defies you to do something. It turns out they're completely inept, and it's one of those where the guy's like doesn't have a chance in hell. It's hysterical. I don't know. I liked it a lot. Then we have restoring the toppled mother of goddess statue.
Oh yeah.
Which is you have to in every region there's these little goddess statues that are. They're, I think, very important in Breath of the Wild. I forget what they do.
I can't even remember, and I've done them.
You have to thing. You have to give like a piece of one of the dragons.
Yeah, and I
forget what it unlocks.
I think it's what unlocks the traditional Zelda outfit in Breath of the Wild. It's like the
is it
the set of the Wild? Is that? Oh no, that's what you get for doing all the shrines.
I forget what that is.
Oh, well.
Anyway, it is not important, but it's something a little more important than in this game.
Hot-footed frog.
But it's a restoration project. The Mother of Goddess statue in the big shrine where there's the map room that can help you unlock the memories is toppled over, and it's a restoration project, which is one of my favorite things in any games. Anytime there's like, you have to rebuild this place, then I'm in. I'm so in. I love it. So that was why I like that one. Okay, so side adventures?
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to side adventures, some of the more sort of in-depth story-based quests. There are some wonderful things. There are just some wonderful things. So there's some great sets of side adventures as well, where there's several in a set. I'll start by talking about, well, similar to what we were talking about with the photography and the figurines, is there is an even more literal evolution of that concept in a side adventure with Kilton?
Yes.
Kilton?
Is it Kilton or Colton? It is Kilton. It is Kilton. Kilton. Colton is the brother.
With Kilton of the brothers Kilton and Colton, taken up shop in Tarrytown. Yeah. They you do something to unlock. I can't remember what it is. You do something to deliver something to his brother or something. As related to the bubble
his
frog
brother's he wants to become a mythical creature, and you're helping him out, and his brother's like, oh cool, okay. Once you've done that, he starts being like, I want to put a statue here, but he can't describe a monster properly or something like that.
That's right.
And then
so he's got a little
tasks you.
he's got a platform in Tarrytown where he wants to display some figurines of or some statues of some monsters, and he basically then says, right, I don't know what it looks like, so go and photograph it, and you have to go and find one of the monsters in the wild, photograph it and bring it back, and then he'll make a almost to scale replica, depending on the size of the monster, full 3D figure that you can then move around and place on this massive diorama. And there's 5 of those. You start with obviously doing like a bokoblin, and you end up with like a whole fucking Gleok. And then once you finish that, you can keep going, and you can photograph any monster, including the bosses.
Yes.
And he'll make a figurine of it or a statue of it, and it just becomes the most absurd, cluttered things.
I believe including Ganon, or at least
really?
Phantom Ganon. Yeah, I saw some on Reddit that had a Phantom Ganon in the village.
That's brilliant.
Which is like, I think there was a missed opportunity for a quest where the villagers rebel and then decide to tar and feather Kilton driving out of town.
I mean, that's almost certainly what's
the real
going to
estate
happen.
just takes a giant hit, I believe, when you have these hideous, grotesque. It's kind of like that giant eyeball in Vegas right now, where I'm like, if you live next to that, you should sue, because your life is just now ruined.
I love just how integrated it is, because there is a constant dialogue with him and Hudson being like, you really can't be doing this. This is really bad. And people just being like, oh, I don't like it. And it's just really good. And it's just really fun going and finding the monsters. And then the fact that it can continue afterwards to sort of your own desire, whether or not you want to get like a lineup of all the Lionels, you can do that.
It's once again one of those things that could be its own game. You know, like I could, and I'm sure it's gonna happen. Like people are gonna, you know, as the years go by, like people are gonna essentially create rules for games in Tears of the Kingdom. You know, and it's gonna be like a whole different bunch of games. You know, I'll be like, and that's one of them. Like, you know, the statues and like do this and that.
Yeah,
it's just staggering.
There's another sort of set of side adventures that I really loved, and part of the love of them actually came out of dreadful dog. Part of the love of these quests came out of my recent playthrough of Breath of the Wild, and that is because all of these quests are set in the Typhlo ruins, which are north of the Korok Forest.
Yes.
And when I was going around these fantastic ruined statues and like columns and pillars and everything in Tears of the Kingdom, and there's a whole set of side adventures where you're solving riddles to try and sort of do certain. Got to solve a riddle, find a certain spot, put some sort of weapon with a certain element to unlock a thing, and that they're really, really fun. And I was just really enjoying just like going around these ruins, and there's lots of construct enemies around. And I was like, I don't remember this area from Breath of the Wild. And there's a reason why I don't remember it, because it's entirely in darkness in Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
You go in there to do one thing, and you never need to there's like
and there's not really a good way to light it up.
There's like a Hinox in there.
Yeah, you can't really light it up properly, even if you tried.
And there is, I don't know how much of what you see in Tears of the Kingdom is actually what's in the darkness of Breath of the Wild.
Well, I'm sure there's a video.
Fantastic area.
I'm sure there's a video.
There is. But it's such a fantastic area. It's so interesting, and it's just really, really great, and it's really great to explore. And it's just like, it's brilliant.
It plays into like the whole. There's so many little things like that in this game that are very like, adventure book movie, Indiana Jones, The Mummy kind of a thing. You know, where you're like, which as of course most kids were obsessed with, you know, this kind of like, ooh, and then this little thing unlocks this little thing, and there's tons of that in Tears of the Kingdom, that really just sort of enriched the world, you know, because again, it's optional stuff, but it's delightful. The quick thing about the how it was completely dark in Breath of the Wild, similar to Eventide, where both those areas are no longer the way they were in Breath of the Wild. They are now repurposed in several shrines.
Yes.
The full darkness, there's like a couple of them, I believe, in
there are
shrines. And then Eventide, of course, is like about 30 different shrines that do that. And I think that's brilliant because we'll talk about this much later, but in Breath of the Wild, one of the big criticisms I would level at the game is that if you do all the shrines, there are a ton of redundant shrines.
Yeah.
There are so many battle shrines, and by the end of the game, you start getting a little upset when you find another battle shrine. And I think they've really solved that in Tears of the Kingdom, and part of it is that little thing. The repurposing those two islands. Yep. You want to go move on to a different side adventure?
Yeah. So another of the side adventures that I really enjoyed, and again, it's something that's tied into how the world of Hyrule was sort of evolved, is how you unlock the Great Fairy Fountains in this game, and they're in different places. To the giant flower buds are in different places anyway, so you've got to go and find them instead of just paying them extortionate amount of rupees that you have to do in Breath of the Wild to unlock them.
Another criticism of Breath of the Wild.
Although having said that, once you do pay to unlock them, you don't have to pay to upgrade your armor with rupees. And
so
honestly,
what you're saying is it's the difference between a game you buy on your phone full out and a free to play game.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
So you're actually saying that it's a little bit of a scam in Tears of the Kingdom.
In Tears of the Kingdom, genuinely, it was much more fun to upgrade the armor in Breath of the Wild than it was in Tears of the Kingdom.
I will say that I find it much, much easier to get money in Tears of the Kingdom than in Breath of the Wild. I ended up with 100,000 rupees that I never used. So
wow.
And I unlocked a lot of the armor stuff. So I just didn't, I was just selling, I think
everything.
But no, I was keeping a lot of shit, but I was like probably selling a lot of Lionel hooves.
Oh yeah.
And those are really quite pricey.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Anyway, the way you unlock them in Tears of the Kingdom is great, because what you have to do is you have to basically help a travelling band of musicians to get to each of the flower buds, because the fairies want to hear some music before they awaken and reopen their flower buds to you in exchange for money, and the way these work are great. So you go to a stable, the nearest stable to a flower bud, to a Great Fairy flower bud. There'll be the conductor or somebody from the band, and they'll be like, oh, we need a flautist, or oh, we need a horn player, or we need a flute player, whatever. And there'll be a little quest to go and find the missing musician who's sort of, the band's broken up, Yoko Ono's come in or something, I don't know. And you've got to go and
I was going to make that reference.
And you've got to go and find the missing musician and convince them to sort of rejoin the band. And then once you've done that, you then have to construct some way of getting the band members to the flower bud, because they've got this rickety, broken down like wagon, and you need to go and find some wheels and like get a horse maybe and like glue it to the wagon, or like get them in a boat and get them across a river to get them to the fairy fountain. And it's just like not only is it really, really fun, and it's a lot of very different puzzle solving, but also like, and this might be me just reading more into it than there is, but like in Breath of the Wild, the only music you really heard was Cass playing his accordion in the middle of nowhere, and it was devastatingly lonely.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you get a sense that like art and culture is coming back into the world. You've got this like traveling band of musicians, and there's like there was something really hopeful about that that I just loved.
I think it's by design, again, that it is the difference between, and it is a great analogy for like, the difference between Breath of the Wild is you have a lonely accordion player, and Tears of the Kingdom has this band that wants to be together again and wants to rebuild, and they want to
tour around the world.
They want to tour and they want to play for everybody. Yeah, it's really it's a really good analogy for how both games are different. One is a lonely, desolate, melancholic experience, and the other one's a much more joyful, hopeful game. In a way,
Yeah.
And I have to say, this makes me want to I think every game should have a get the band back together side quest, because it's just a great. Which actually, just realized, Mario Odyssey has that.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
In New Donk City.
Yeah,
which
it does
is
indeed.
one of the highlights of that game when you get them back together. It's
brilliant.
Phenomenal. But
absolutely brilliant.
So I guess Nintendo agrees with me.
It's also what the structure of Link's Awakening is, essentially.
You are 100% correct. I guess
you're
Nintendo's
putting the one-man band back together, and then you put Dick Van Dyke up in front of the Windfish's egg.
Well, right. The
I might be remembering that wrong, but
no, I think that's correct. Yeah.
But speaking of Cass, who unfortunately is not in this game yet,
hashtag justice for Cass.
He's got to be back. He's got to come back.
If
he's got to come back in the DLC. He's got to be the narrator of the DLC like he was in Breath of the Wild. He's too brilliant.
I think if he's not, I think it's fair to send death threats to Nintendo devs.
I'm definitely cutting that out. But
I am joking. By the way, for the video people, I do not condone that whatsoever. Please don't take this literally. No, never.
In his place is a new winged traveller storyteller, which is Penn, who is working for the newspaper, and he's like a roving reporter. Specifically following up on the puppet Zelda sightings that we mentioned in the last episode, and in every stable he's there following up on some hot lead because somebody's reported some Zelda sighting that's going on, and he wants you to help investigate it, and that's its own separate set of side adventures, and they're great. It's just like, again, it's a sign that there's this sort of normality coming back to this world. There's a newspaper now, there's reporters, there's there's people wanting to know what's going on and spread the word and all of that sort of stuff, and it's really fun to sort of be a part of that. And there's some really good and clever sort of quests within that as well. Like I really enjoyed the one where it was just like, oh yeah, there's a talking chicken, and he's telling, like, reading your fortunes or whatever, and you're like, okay, so what on earth is this? And you go up, and it's a talking chicken.
It is, and then it turns out it's a Yiga.
It's a Yiga.
Yeah, it's a Yiga bastard, and it's legitimately hilarious. Actually, but actually, this is what I love. Part of the story. Okay, so I think actually, I think a lot of people who are, I don't know who these people are, but who are maybe lamenting the way the narrative is in this game. I've seen that. I don't know what's wrong with people. This is one quest that is just absolutely fantastic, and I would say, like, if you are not a completionist and you're listening to this and you've played the main quest, and you haven't done everything, I do highly recommend doing all the pen missions. Yeah. Because you get a ton of really great little lore. I think the way it's structured is fantastic, because that's part of the Zelda mystery quest in a way. Is finding Zelda, which we talked a lot in the first episode. It is this thing where you every single one of the quests that Pen gives you is something about Zelda either told someone to do something. Yeah. And you're going to find out, was it the real Zelda who told them to do something? Was it a Yiga Zelda? Or was it or was it Puppet Zelda? And you never know. And that's kind of the brilliance of it, is like, you're like, oh, what's this? You don't know. And you're trying to figure out, like, someone told, she told someone how to feed goats or something, do some sort of goat feed, and the guy's like, it actually hurt them, they left or something. Some BS. I forget what it is exactly. But it is this this wonderful thing where you're like constantly finding out more about Zelda's character. Like she's warm, she's giving, she genuinely cares about people. She's not just a royal. She goes up, and if someone has a problem, she seems to genuinely try to find solutions to people's problems. And I think that's part of the rebuilding thing. Like, you can imagine her going around with Link during these 7 years, going around the world and finding out, like, what do you need? Going to this region and this stable and figuring out, hey, this guy's got this problem. He can't figure out how to feed his goats, or these guys don't, and just she gives little advice, and it speaks to her character. It speaks to another reason why you're so desperate to find her and help her out, because you just find out these lovely little things. And when it turns out she's not a good person, it's because it was a Yiga Zelda or a Puppet Zelda or something,
Yeah.
And it's lovely, and you get to like Pen, who's a fun little character. Although he's not Cass, sorry. I think he soars high on his own supply a little too much, but it's he's a lovely little character, and we'll talk about this later. But I would love to see him and Cass interact. And there's a little something that we'll talk about later at the end of this newspaper line that is fantastic, and that maybe is hinting to something. Hopefully,
yeah.
Let's see. We talked about this earlier, but filling out the compendium is a side adventure, of course. Which is, we talked about it in depth. We loved it.
Yeah. Same with the bubble frogs. We'll talk about that when we come to the caves chat.
Madison's. Oh, sorry.
So I've got. So I was going to talk about. Cool. So I'm going to talk quickly about those like army quests.
Mm-hmm.
That leads into talking about the restoration of Lurelin Village.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to ask you for what your favourite side adventure is, which is then your cue to talk about the whole Yiga adventure stuff.
So we're not talking about Yiga until then, right?
And then I'll say, then you can ask me what my favourite side adventure is, and I'll talk about Madison.
Okay, so I won't talk about Madison right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think there's only a couple more to talk about then, besides what you just planned out.
Go for it. Pick one of those.
Okay, so the other side adventure I thought was excellent, although I found it overwhelming when I first got to it, was the Hateno, whatever, the mayor election.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because it is not just one side quest. It is like a whole slew of little side things that you have to do to unlock that election itself. And when I first got there, I was early in the game, and I was like, this is incredible, but I'm getting overwhelmed. Like, I want to do this, but I really just want to keep exploring. Yeah. So I did
exactly the same.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness, is this the amount of content in Hateno alone? That's going to be woof.
Yeah.
If this is the amount of content in Hateno alone, we're, wow. Like, we're going to be playing this game for 200 hours, and it was more than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought that was really cool. I thought it was, again, a cool way to get to talk to all the different fun NPCs in Hateno, see kind of their journey from Breath of the Wild. And again, this Hateno is one of the main places where you really see the way Hyrule has moved on from the doom and gloom of Breath of the Wild. And it's really looking towards the future, despite the new threat. It's looking towards rebuilding. It's looking towards, hey, what's the future of this village? Is it known for growing vegetables, or is it known for its clothing and its fashion? Yeah. And of course, it turns out it's both. It can be both, and they find out, we're richer with one another. There's more options, more things. So it's really about a world rediscovering the simple joys of just, hey, there's no current threat. We're just trying to, live and find passion, essentially, in our work, which is a phenomenal little message, I think. It's this little community that's rebuilding, and they're full of hope, and they, all love being where they are and working and all that stuff. It's great. I love that one.
You say you got one more?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see before we go into the thing. Bring Peace to Hyrule, you're about to talk about. Yeah. Colton, we're talking about for the caves.
Mm-hmm.
Legend of the Great Sky Island. Was a phenomenal side adventure. I think you told me to go look.
Yeah,
to go look there, because I had not even thought of it. It is a side adventure that you unlock by going at the top of the Temple of Time on the Great Sky Island, the beginning island. And you talk to this Zonai, what do you call them? Constructs?
Stuart? Yeah,
Friendly,
construct
friendly
Stuart.
constructs, the friendly constructs. And he says, hey, I have something for you to do. There's this little, challenge.
Did you ever play Pilot Wings?
Hey, you know how Pilot Wing used to be at the beginning of every Nintendo console, and they realized that they don't sell and that they get reviewed poorly. Yeah, so they stopped making them, but they still have a lot of love for them. So here's a better version of this. Anyway,
Pilot Wings 3D was a nice game. I love
that. I would
anyway, let's not do that.
No, I would even argue all the Pilot Wing games have their place.
Yeah, Pilot Wings 3D is the only one I actually played, and I loved it.
They're always really good early games to demonstrate what the console can do. Is what it is. Anyway, so he says, hey, we're gonna rejigger this entire island, and it's suddenly filled with little islands that have the
waterfalls,
and it completely changes how you go around the island, because you essentially cannot land. You have to you have to light three fires, and you have to go around the island, going up the waterfalls, to constantly stay up in the air with your little waterfall thing, your little Zora. Going up
your Zora armor allows you to
armor.
If you fly into a waterfall, you immediately then just like ascend it.
Exactly.
Not ascend, but you go up it.
Right.
And it also recharges your stamina wheel as well.
It does, right. And so it becomes this really fun, arcadey little thing where you just, like Nights into Dream kind of thing, and you're like going around and lighting up fires, and it's a delight. And then you get like what do you get? Some sort of fabric, I believe, for it, and just lore. I think he tells you lore of like why the Temple of Time was essentially built for you.
And then you get a Zonai fabric, I think.
Right, because we saw in the flashbacks that the temple used to be in the Great Plateau. And why is it in the sky? And it's essentially, he tells you, because we knew that you were going to come. And we knew that the world was going to be destroyed by Ganondorf, so we needed you to be safe up here. So that's how you find out. Okay, so this whole island was built to be your safe space, whatever. Anyway, so it's a great quest. My only qualm with it is then you don't get to play on that island with the waterfalls.
No, it would be a lovely thing if they stuck around, because it's so much fun. It's so much fun to travel around like that.
It really is. Yeah, I agree. Messages from the Ancient Era. Those were great.
I don't remember that.
When was that? So those were, you talked to this scientist, not architect. Indiana Jones job. Archaeologist. So you talk to this archaeologist dude in Kakariko, and he says, hey, there's these remote star islands in the sky, and I would like for you to be able to tell me what's on those. There's these remote star islands in the sky, and they all have a little
tablet on them.
With an engraving. I would like for you to find a way to report back what it says, and if it's in ancient Hyrulean, so you have to take a picture of it, and he decodes it. And it's usually a little piece of lore. Some of it is inconsequential, but some of it, again, really fun little lore about Zelda in the past and what the past was. And on top of that, go ahead.
I was going to say, but they're all really fun to get to.
Yes, that was my main.
That's the puzzle. Is like, okay, they're in the middle of nowhere in the sky. You got to think about, okay, maybe if I launch off of there, maybe I can fly across. Do I need to build something? Do I need to get over there? And then sometimes you get that incredible surprise where you land on one and it just starts plummeting to the earth.
The first one I did that too. I was lucky because there's some that just land on the earth, The first one I got was above the Great Hyrule Forest, and it literally goes all the way into the depth.
All the way down to the depths. Amazing.
Right by the Gleeok's den with the King Gleeok, which is incredible. You know, so it's like, oh my goodness. You know, it's mind-blowing.
And it doesn't need to be there. Like that, you didn't need to do that.
No.
And it's just amazing.
But it's another way for the game to, you know, it's a phenomenal game design. Because it is like, look, this game is gigantic. So they have to find ways to redirect the player to various areas, right? To get to like, hey, have you looked here? You know, but there's the depth, there's the sky, there's the surface. How do you do that? You know, and that's one of them is like, you direct players to do something fun, and then, hey, how about, like, we quickly remind you that there are depth in this game. You probably forgot, because you probably haven't been there in 50 hours, if you're like me.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's another great way to be like, hey, look at this. You know, and it's done in a way that's like, it's always elegant. You know, it's always part of the game. It's never like, hey, have you considered going back to the depth? Because we put a lot of time into this game. You should probably go back. No, it's like, hey, we're going to drag you in there and it's going to be a ton of fun. You know, it's amazing. It really is. I thought that was a great little thing.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Really cool.
A Call from the Depth. That was incredible. That was the mission that you get you go to Great Plateau. And you go to the Temple of Time, and the big statue actually is not a goddess statue. It's this weird voice that tells you, hey, can you release me? You have to find a way to drain the water in Great Plateau. Yeah. And there's this flooded area in the Great Plateau, and they're like, hey, how do I, you know, there's got to be a bombable thing. And it's like, it's on the walls. It's like super fun to figure out. And then you bomb it, of course, and it's delightful. The water comes out. Yeah. And you find this little bargainer statue there who's like, hey, thanks for freeing me, but I actually have a giant quest for you now. Yeah. Which is, there are 4 spots on the Great Plateau that have these chasms that go into the depth. And right by every single one of them, you're going to find an eye, a stone eye, and you have to bring this to me in the depth. You have to find a way to bring this. So you have to like take every single stone eye. You have to find them. They're usually a little hidden under a stone or something fun. Then you have to throw them in the depth, plunge after it. Yeah. And then usually the game has like a fun little, you know, either it's like rails or something by it, or like something you can build a vehicle or a plane or something that's already pre-built. It's like, hey, why don't you try bringing it this way? Why don't you try, you know, and you don't have to do that. You could find other clever ways to bring the eye to the statue, which is a little further away every time. Yeah. But it's every time, it's a little puzzle of like, because you have to bring 4 of these eyes to this giant statue. And by the way, one of the most beautifully designed areas in the game,
which is absolutely stunning.
Gigantic room with this bargainer statue that's under the abandoned Temple of Time thing, Great Abandoned Central Mine. It's under it. It's gigantic. It's really like one of the most
absolutely
incredible
epic
places I've seen.
And it's one of the best rewards for a quest as well.
Yes, because it's
which is amazing. It's just an outright heart container.
It's an outright heart container, exactly. And it feels wonderful.
It feels like it, because it feels like you've done like 4 shrines in doing those 4 chasms, finding the 4 eyes, down the 4 chasms, the 4 totally different types of vehicular transportation you need to then make. It's absolutely
And again,
brilliant.
this is once again, like we're talking about optional stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff you might never stumble upon.
Yeah.
You know, in a gigantic game that, you know, some people will never do this, you know, and it's this huge, incredibly well, you know, designed thing. It's just marvelous. Again, a thing that feeds into the game design of like, you know, making you go to the depth and the you know, the surface and the kind of constant conversation between the 2 areas. It's fantastic. Really is just and that's it. Now it's your turn to do this whole
everything
rigmarole.
So one of the other sort of groups of side adventures there are, which we sort of mentioned, is the Bring Peace to Hyrule ones, because there is a small army of willing fighters and soldiers that are circulating around Hyrule, trying to sort of defeat larger sort of clans of of enemies that have occupied various strongholds. And they're brilliant. Like, you have to go and, you're told where they are, roughly. You go and find them. You see them sort of riding around like the riders of the Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings, but, with buckets and pot lids and soup ladles.
Yeah.
But, and then, you'll see some sort of occupied station. It might be, like a fort on a hill or something else, and together you go and take on these hordes of enemies. And it's really, really cool because, like, you get, you sort of get like a boss health bar going across the top of the screen, but it's like, that's the health bar of like the collective forces of that settlement. Felt, in many ways, it reminded me a bit of Hyrule Warriors, which I quite liked. And it's brilliant because, like,
with
together,
better lore,
together you charge into these fights, and it's brilliant because you really feel, I don't know, like, you feel like a weight of responsibility as this sort of hero. But also you do feel like you're the number 9 stepping up to take a penalty. It's like, there's a responsibility, but also a sense of like greatness that you sort of have, and you go, right, here we go, let's absolutely do this.
And I've never I don't know if this happens. I don't think they can get hurt, right?
I don't know, actually.
Because I've always tried to do as fast as possible to like prevent that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a thing. It's not like Pikmin. It's not like one's going to suddenly die.
No. It's not like Hyrule Warriors where everybody could get like knocked out and defeated.
Yeah.
But it's just like, but it's the sense of that, and it's that, it's a wonderful sense of storytelling and world building. And there's a similar sort of setup down in Lurelin Village, which is this lovely little fishing village, and the entire village has been taken over by like enemies, by bokoblins and moblins and everything. And again, it's got this setup where you basically have to take out all of the enemies with this one giant health bar, and there's probably about, I wouldn't be surprised if there were 60, 70 enemies.
That many?
There were so many, because there's so many groups of them.
Yes,
all
you're
around
right.
the village, out in the water, on like the structures in the sea.
Yes, yeah.
And it's really tough because
depending when you get to it,
exactly. Yeah. But it's great because it's got this real sense of it's got this real sort of drastic sort of sense to it. It's really important. You really care about this village and these people. And the wonderful thing is, when you do get through defeating all of the enemies and rescuing the town, you then get to a whole series of side adventures of rebuilding the village. Which involves you like sourcing materials, cutting down trees, even like building like scaffolding and like sort of rebuilding everything. And for every
using the right trees, the right shape of trees, it's great.
It's just, it's genius. It's phenomenal. It's totally really again, it's unnecessary stuff and it's optional stuff, but it's absolutely wonderful, and it makes you really care about this village and these people even more than you did from just them being a sympathetic sort of place. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Really well done.
And again, it's one of those places, and the Bring Peace to Hyrule thing is similar, where you see that the citizens of Hyrule are a completely different attitude. And they want to rebuild, and they're not defeatist, and they're like, we're going to fight, we're going to rebuild, we're doing all of it. There's no desolate melancholy again. It's a very different tone, from Breath of the Wild. And that's definitely one of those, I think rebuilding is like the ultimate, we're not going to let things get to us,
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, who doesn't love rebuilding a town in a adventure game?
It's great.
It's phenomenal. It's always a joy. Yeah.
I'll tell you what my favourite side adventure was.
What was it?
That was Matterson. The little girl, the little daughter of Hudson, the builder come politician in Tarrytown, who married the Gerudo tailor, Ronson. And they've now got this little daughter in Tarrytown, and she's looking to move to Gerudo Town, which is part of the Gerudo custom. And it is such such a beautiful little story. It's surprisingly emotional. Some beautiful touches in there. It's brilliant world building as well, because it's like reinforcing the customs and the traditions of like the different tribes of Hyrule, and essentially that's it's not like there's not much gameplay wise to do apart from just like build a balloon and a platform and a thing and just talk to some people, but it's just the weight of it, the weight of the story of it is so beautifully done. It's so beautifully told. Again, it's a story that doesn't necessarily change anything in the grand scheme of the larger story at play, but it does so much to make you care about this world, to feel part of it, to feel like you are, like an active part of this world, not just watching this world, but you're responsible for it, And again, it's got stuff where after the fact, after you get the tick mark in your pause menu, you can go and there is more stuff to do that's entirely optional. You can go and talk to them, and and Ronson is saying like, I'd love to just be able to see. I'd love to be able to see how my little daughter's getting on, and you can go to Gerudo Town and take a picture of her.
I think I told you to do that. Yeah.
You did, and you go and show it to them, and it's just like. It's so beautifully
optional.
done.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and
I loved playing Breath of the Wild and stumbling across Ronson in the Kara Bazaar.
Yeah.
And just chatting to her in that. It's like 7 years previously, just saying like, I really wish there was somebody out there for me. She says it's her line in Breath of the Wild, and I'm just like, I just love knowing the story that's to come for her. Yeah. It's just like.
And you're responsible for getting them together too. So you're essentially responsible for that kid, inadvertently, because you made them meet. Yeah,
absolutely wonderful. How about
great.
you? Like, what was your favorite of the side stuff?
I think it has to be, for so many reasons, the Yiga clan. Because it literally goes all sorts of places.
Yeah.
There's a Yiga side adventure on the surface, and there's a gigantic side adventure, Yiga side adventure in the depth that ties into the main story. And on top of that, it like kind of, once again, it's one of those like, that was a fun aspect of Breath of the Wild, the Yiga clan, but kind of got tired at points. Like you got attacked all the time, and it was only like the actual Yiga clan thing with the stealth option. That was a fun side thing. But then the entire game, you just keep getting assaulted by these.
Yeah, and the boss was, what's his Koga? He's like, he's a bit of a joke, because he's this
a bit of a joke,
kind of silly, buffoonish,
right,
overweight, pot-bellied guy.
Which is actually in direct opposition to one of the other most moving Breath of the Wild side quests, where you have to help this father of two kids whose wife has been murdered by the Yiga clan because he left the Yiga clan, and they punished him by killing his wife, and they're trying to punish him, and you help him out. Yeah. And it's really a very moving, dark.
It's devastating. It's
story.
Absolutely devastating because the daughter is walking around saying that, oh, mummy's playing hide and seek, and I'll find her soon.
Yeah, and she talks about her in her sleep if you go at night.
Oh,
it's super.
I wasn't a father when I first played that, and I was when I played it this time, and
oh god, it's brutal. And so that's the thing. So
you don't expect Dr. Robotnik to be at the bottom.
No. Yeah, Koga's a bit of a joke, but then you look at, if you think about the real world and you see people who do irreparable harm, there's a lot of buffoons who do irreparable harm. There's a certain one in this country.
And there's several in this country.
But the thing is, yes. So in Breath of the Wild, after you beat Koga, he falls seemingly to his death in a giant chasm, which is the first chasm you see in the games.
That was brilliant. And sort of getting that when I replayed Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and then I forget if it's immediately, but the first time you go to the depth, you go up to an NPC and you're literally not expecting this, and you think it's part of the what's her name, Robbie, and what's her name, the little girl, you know the anyway, Robbie,
Part of their
the
little
exploration
excavation.
thing. Yeah, the excavation exploration thing, and you talk to them, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm part of the you know, the group that's looking up the depth to see what's up with it. Oh, we're gonna kill you, Link, you know, whatever it is. And it's a Yiga guy. And the first time I saw them, because I was so not expecting it, I burst out laughing. I was like dying. I was like, oh, this is so good.
I did not expect them to be back.
No. I was like, they're in the depth. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more perfect once you realized, oh, Koga didn't die.
Yeah.
He built this entire army and infrastructure and Yiga, you know, side thing, organization. In the depth, and there's all these giant hideouts with all these buffoons have figured out some pretty creative Mad Max looking Zonai devices. And it's a delight. You're just going around. Every single one of those hideouts have schema, which unlocks some other delightful Zonai thing that you can then auto build, which is auto build is of course part of that's how you get auto build. Is part of that side adventure. You get it from the first time you fight Koga again. And then a construct comes out. It's like, thanks for clearing the place, and here's this delightful ability, which is auto build, which is, it's crazy that you could go seemingly the entire game
without getting auto build.
Without getting auto build. And I think I will say, I mean, you know, I'm sure most people have played the game if they're listening to this, but if you haven't, or if you know, once you play it again, I highly recommend doing the first temple until you've done the first temple and done gone to the depth and gotten auto build. It's still it's still tutorial. Essentially.
Absolutely.
You have to get that stuff. Like get it immediately. It will make the game so much more fun to have tool in and auto build. Like you just want those things. But yeah, it is phenomenal quest because every one of these outposts has a little writing with a little lore that's usually about the depth, and it's quite helpful, especially at first, because you don't know really how the depth work, and they're like, you know, use this Sunderline or whatever to regain your, you know, if you get hurt down here, or, you know, by the gloom, all these things. Like, essentially, these guys have been here for 7 years, and they found out all these things about the depth, and they write about it, and all these little notes, and it gives like all, you know, and what they're doing down there, their ultimate plan, which is to help Ganondorf ruin the world, essentially. You know, Koga's like this typical guy who realizes that he might be evil, but he's not the Demon King, so he's gonna just like lick his boots, and help him out, you know, to get a reward. And so this whole that's a whole side adventure in itself. Like, you know, you have to find him several times, and of course you unlock all these great abandoned mining areas that have all sorts of great things. Like they're usually under a city. That's the other thing too.
They're always,
echoes. Echoes.
We'll
the
talk
depth.
about that when we come to the
we'll
depth
talk about that later.
Chat, but that's extraordinary.
All of that is great, and it's a great way to make you go to the important places in the depth if you just do that side adventure. Because even if you didn't want to explore it fully, if you just did that side adventure, you get to see so much, and you get all the important stuff. I think they give you probably some of the most important schemas actually out of those. And so you do that. That's great. And then it turns out there's even more Yiga stuff on the surface, because you stumble upon this one side adventure where you have to, if you go back to the original Yiga outpost on the surface from Breath of the Wild, they're like, you can't come in unless you're Yiga. And then you figure out, by other places, there's this outfit I could get. And there's this guy they kidnapped who made a Yiga outfit that's seemingly like the best. And so you find all these pieces, which in itself is great. There's one in the old man, the old man's cabin from Breath of the Wild. There's these two guys in there. It's great. And there's one in the original cave from the Great Plateau. There's these guys there and stuff. So the Yiga is all over the place. And if you do infiltrate the Yiga outpost, first of all, it's hilarious. Every Yiga in there has like some really genuinely funny lines
Yeah.
about various stuff, and they're like banana humor and Zona humor, and it's great. And then if you go in there, there's a guy who's like, "Hey, you want to do an ultimate challenge here? If you beat this ultimate challenge, you will get our special
treasure or whatever
prize Yiga thing you can learn." So you do that, and it's a fun little like battle thing. You just have to kind of like use slow motion arrowing a lot, and you just can like defeat a bunch of like. It's essentially like jump and shoot as many Yiga clan people before you land kind of situation, which is super fun. And then on top of that, you get one of the coolest things in the game, which is the ability that
totally unexpected.
I know. It's this ability that these bastards in Breath of the Wild, the big Yiga guys with the wind cleavers, have. It's this like essentially like Dragon Ball like thing where you like punch the earth and create some sort of earthquake air thing that hurts the enemies, and you can use it in the game as Link if you don't have any weapons on. That's what happens. It's incredible.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It's amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
And then you also get the thunder resistant helm from the from Breath of the Wild as well, which is a super useful item to have in certain regions, of course. So it's great. I mean, the rewards are fantastic, but all in all, it's just the world building. Like Yiga Clan from Breath of the Wild, I always thought they were a great idea, and most of it was really well implemented, and we talked about it. Like there was these amazing story beats, like the guy getting his wife murdered by leaving the clan, and all this stuff was amazing, and genuinely kind of funny when you meet weird NPCs, and they doubled down on that, because in the original it was like, hey, this guy's like looks like he's selling vegetables. Oh no, he's not. He's a Yiga.
Yeah.
But in this one, they literally have chickens. Chickens
or
or Yiga clan members
or bananas.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've tried this, but if you attack the banana before hitting it, they're like, "Oh no, he found out!" Like this little dialogue. Like if you don't try to fall for the trap, they're like, it's incredible, and it's so again meticulous.
Yeah.
It's all over the world. They just figure out how to make this, interesting. They're all over the world. There's little things, and it's just so rewarding just to do them. And of course, the best thing in possibly most fun thing to do ever is to, when you're in the depth and you go to a Yiga outpost, those flying bastards, the ones who have on like Zonai flying structures, is to use a keys eyeball, and just like arrow. And just throw an arrow, and it like just directly hits, because they're like protected. But if you do that, like it just immediately hits them, and it's just so delightful.
So fun.
It's just so fun. Yeah, that was it.
Right, I need to wrap this up because I need to go and pick up Nora from nursery. Okay, here we go. Whoop. So there we go. That is our discussion on the new Hyrule, the world 6, 7, 8 years on, side quests, side adventures, NPCs. I mean, again, we're 2 episodes in and we've barely scratched the surface, literally, and we haven't even touched the sky in the depths. So there's going to be much, much more to come in the future episodes. If you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying this, get in touch with us. Chat to us on social media at O3C Games on everything. Go to o3c.games, sign up for our newsletter, hit the join button to the Discord server, come and chat with us there. Tell us what you're playing. If you're playing Tears of the Kingdom, tell us about that. There's a whole Zelda thread right there on the Discord for some great chat. You can chat to us individually. I'm on, Twitter, X, at Jonathan Dunn.
I'm on Twitter and Threads at Kaspar Merowitz, one word. Probably only on Threads in like a couple of months if you're listening to this later.
We'll see. Goodness knows.
Who knows? Yeah.
Goodness knows. There's a lot more discussion to come from us in this sub-series of spoiler specials, so we do hope that you join us next time.
Yes, please do.
Brilliant.
Okay.